We're here with Dan Gage, the newly minted president of Natural Gas Vehicles for America, or NGVAmerica. Dan, first and foremost, congratulations on your appointment as president of the organization.
Thanks, Joe.
Why don't you tell us about the organization and what you've got going on these days?
Sure. Well, we are a 200-plus member organization. We represent members all across the natural gas vehicle and transportation value chain, everything from local distribution companies and utilities to equipment, service, supply, operators, OEMs, so a little bit of everyone. But we are in place to advance on-road and off-road applications for natural gas and transportation.
Now, natural gas was definitely the hot topic a few years back. Arguably, electrification has taken some of that buzz away. We can get to that in a minute. But the fact of the matter is natural gas is still a very viable option for a lot of fleets, certainly applications in terms of regional operations. So what do you say to the folks who are talking so much about electrification and maybe not paying as much attention to natural gas as they might have in years past?
Well, electrification is certainly an option, especially for light duty, but it's not commercially available yet for medium or heavy duty, and that's important. It's important when we think about emissions. We think about emissions controls and reductions in greenhouse gases, reductions in nitrogen oxide or NOx. Natural gas provides a very real solution today for all of those problems, all of those issues, all of those challenges. It's reliable, it's available, and it's sustainable.
Now, in terms of cost, there's been historically kind of a concern that, yes, they're very clean and they're available, but there's a cost issue. And incentives have certainly been something that have helped move natural gas vehicles along. I know that as part of the settlement with Volkswagen, there's some opportunity there and I don't think people probably realize that there's opportunity in the heavy truck space as well as part of that settlement fund.
Well, the Volkswagen settlement will provide $2.9 billion to the states to distribute for a whole host of projects that with the end goal of reducing emissions. And when you look at all of the different options that are available, everything from diesel to electric to potentially fuel cell someday, and natural gas, it's natural gas that provides the biggest cost-effective benefit in terms of investment of those funds. We've been doing our part at NGVAmerica with our member companies to share that information, share the facts with those who are putting together these plans in all of the states. And eventually, very shortly, there will be funds available and public-private partnerships will be able to apply for them.
So public-private partnerships will be able to apply for them, so it wouldn't be like an individual company that could apply for some of those funds, or could they?
It could be. It could be. Transit authorities, so every state can do it differently. I mean, there's a host of rules and regulations that are set forth by the trustee and the judge, but each state will have its own plans based on needs. And our argument to those state regulators is that it should be focused on the biggest investment of resources with the biggest benefit, and also focus on those areas that have the dirtiest air.
So when you said $2.9 billion, is that the entire settlement, or is that specific to just these applications?
It's $2.9 billion for Appendix D, which applies to these funds that go to the states.
Okay. So now, are passenger cars cooked in there as well? Could states be offering something to your average car buyer as part of that fund?
Likely it would be for infrastructure for like EVs.
Okay.
Correct. Not necessarily purchase of new EVs.
Okay. So what about infrastructure for natural gas fueling? Would that be part of it?
It's for vehicles.
It's for vehicles. Okay. So then one of the aside from incentives, of course, the cost of natural gas fuel has always been a big incentive in terms of it being a lower cost fuel. Where are things in terms of fuel prices these days, and what's the long-term outlook there?
Well, there are opportunities through the states. There are also a lot of opportunities with federal resources. NGVAmerica, we have a whole team that works to put together not only a lobby for those opportunities and options in the annual budget, but also to alert our members, educate our members, and their potential customers and end users of those available funds. There's DERA funds. We mentioned a minute ago the VW settlement monies that go through the states. So there are oftentimes incentives that help not just on the purchase, but also the build out of some of the infrastructure.
And then, do you have any success stories from some people who have really embraced natural gas, on the fleet side, on the heavy duty truck side, that have come through and made that case for, yes, it's really beneficial for us long term, and here's the reasons why?
Right, so we do represent fleet operators. UPS is a member. Waste Management. Waste Management has 6,000 natural gas vehicles on the road today. They just opened their 100th station. So there are examples all over the country of fleets that have opted to at least begin to incorporate natural gas into their applications. When you look at the U.S. Postal Service, more and more of their private contracted carriers are switching over to natural gas and the benefits of natural gas. It's a reliable fuel. It's long-term price stability. It doesn't fluctuate as diesel does. And it's local and it's abundant and it's American. So more and more of our member companies that are where a sustainability message is important, a sustainability initiative is important, are looking at natural gas and natural gas for transportation.
So I mentioned at the top, but electrification certainly has taken all the air out of the room in terms of buzz. Now, whether or not that has legs, that remains to be seen. But one of the things I've found interesting is that you don't hear like this silver bullet approach that it's only going to be natural gas, that's going to be the future. It's only going to be electric trucks that are going to be the future. Like maybe there's some way where it can all work together. You see some of these ideas about an electric motor, on the wheel ends or something like that, augmented by an internal combustion engine. I mean, do you think that is an opportunity for natural gas down the road that you could say, here is the cleanest truck you could possibly build. It's got a natural gas internal combustion, it's got electric motors at the wheel ends. I mean, it's a bit pie in the sky, but the technology is right in front of us right now.
When I think you have to realize that fleet operators, when they make money, it's when their trucks are rolling down the highway and not plugged in. Currently, there's no available electric technology that meets those heavy-duty and medium-duty demands. Natural gas does. Besides its emission benefits, and the new Cummins Westport engine has, in essence, a zero emission equivalent rating by both the EPA and CARB. It's a terrific opportunity, it's a terrific option for fleet managers. When you look at electric, this is still a promise days down the road. If and when it becomes available at the heavy-duty level, it will likely be incredibly cost prohibitive. There are few details about what the size and weight of the battery packs and how those will be incorporated into the entire tractor-trailer package. So when you look at whether electric is an option, it's not an option today. And so if fleet managers want to continue to promote a sustainable future, if they want to continue to look for price stability, we think natural gas is really the best option right now. It's commercially available right now. We're not sure when these electric options will be. There are a lot of pronouncements. I know there'll be one later this week, but we'll have to see if and when they develop, and what range and capacity they'll have when they are fully implemented.
Now you talk about technology being available today, and another one of the interviews we did for this program was with NACFE, and they did this Run on Less program where they used it was diesels, but they had equipment on the truck like your tails and your side skirts, and working on improving fuel efficiency just through equipment on the truck and under the hood. Is there an opportunity there for natural gas fleets as well to maybe do something similar just with a natural gas powered truck in terms of fuel efficiency in particular?
Well, I think so. I mean, that's always a challenge. It is a challenge for natural gas powertrains on the efficiency side. Certainly a couple of the other alternatives, namely diesel, still beats natural gas when it comes to miles per gallon efficiency. But it doesn't, and it can't, and it won't, even with the most aggressive emissions control standards, beat the emissions positive attributes that natural gas has. And I think, why is that important? When we think of our ports, when we think of our urban areas, in every application that there is, whether it's transit, whether it's trash, whether it's short and regional long-haul trucking or long-haul trucking, our commercial vehicles and heavy-duty vehicles have a great impact on emissions, both from NOx to diesel particulate matter to greenhouse gases. And if we as a country are really committed to reducing that, then we have to look at all the options. And the best option is still natural gas. 1 in 12 Americans today suffer from asthma. 125 million Americans live in areas of non-attainment, EPA non-attainment in terms of air quality, unhealthy air. And so if we want to have an impact on that, we have to address emissions from our transportation sector. And even though heavy-duty vehicles are about 7% of all vehicles on the road, they account for about 50% of all smog-producing emissions.
But now, wouldn't that be mostly older vehicles that are still on the road versus new stuff? The new trucks are very clean. It's the older trucks that are still out there.
That is true. That is true. And certainly new diesel technology is having an impact on that. But it still can't, that new diesel technology, even when used with biodiesel, still does not have the same emissions benefits as natural gas vehicles. And when you add renewable natural gas as the fuel for a natural gas truck, the emission benefits are even greater. The Cummins Westport engine reduces emissions, the emission standards by the EPA and CARB by 90%. When you add in renewable natural gas, it's 125%.
So down the road, though, if we get to a point where natural gas usage really is, on the rise, to a significant level, do the rules of supply and demand apply? Will that cost differential go away? Will those prices increase if more and more fleets all of a sudden are using more natural gas?
It hasn't in the past when we've had these cycles. One thing that's important to note is that natural gas is produced here in America. 33 states produce natural gas. It's abundant. It's a 100-year supply. When we add more natural gas, when we use more natural gas as a society for transportation, it hasn't had an impact on household or business heating prices. So over time, it's proven reliable. It's proven very stable in terms of price. So I don't think there would be reason to see otherwise should we see a huge spike in demand for NGVs in the United States. It's important to note that Europe's been using natural gas in vehicles for decades now, very successfully. China is beginning to look to natural gas to address a lot of their emissions problems. I think I read that China saw an increase of 540% in new orders for liquid natural gas vehicles for the first 7 months of this year, as opposed to the same 7 months in 2016. So other nations see the benefit of that. It's our job at NGVAmerica, and my job as the new president, to try and advance that and educate policymakers and thought influencers about the benefits of natural gas, and give our own members what they need to be able to go out and make that pitch to fleet managers so that they can see the benefits of natural gas powertrains as well.
Now, you mentioned LNG. Really, when we talk natural gas in the United States, it's mostly a CNG conversation. Is it going to be that way going forward, or is LNG going to maybe creep into the equation a little more going forward?
When folks think of natural gas, they think of CNG traditionally, but there are great benefits with LNG as well, especially for high horsepower applications. So traditionally, NGVAmerica has worked to advance on-road applications with trash and trucks and transit, as I mentioned before. We're seeing more and more applications now in marine, both in blue water but also inland waterways, as well as rail applications. And so LNG provides a really unique opportunity to make some big advancements in reductions in emissions, in seagoing vessels and barges up and down rivers, Mississippi River traffic, as well as locomotives. So that's exciting. And then when you add in a component of renewable natural gas, which is just gas that's captured from landfills or biodigesters and the like, and you put that back into the system, it really is a triple threat, I think, of opportunity to have a big impact in terms of sustainable fueling. And
of course, as that build-out takes place, we need fueling infrastructure. So that's always been one of the big questions. So where are we in terms of fueling infrastructure now? Is there a lot of activity in terms of build-out? And also, importantly, is there opportunity for, if LNG were to catch on, is the fueling infrastructure in place to maybe add to the existing infrastructure that's already there? I'm assuming that it's mostly CNG focused in terms of fueling stations as well. But is that an easy upgrade?
Right. So Most fueling stations, as you said, are focused right now on CNG, and that's just because of market demand. There are LNG options. I think what will help was when we have a new LNG engines available for sale, trucks, transit, bus engines available for sale here in the United States. The infrastructure will, and I think will easily be built out when that happens. But we're also seeing a lot of unique applications with virtual pipelines, especially across the Northeast, where refueling stations or centers or applications that just don't have access to a pipeline, but they're creating a virtual pipeline, bringing natural gas in, and then distributing it from there. So, new technologies continue to open up the door to new applications all over.
And who's doing that work? When you said the virtual pipelines, who's doing that work, bringing that fuel in?
NGVAmerica members.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's unique. I mean, we
Right.
represent members that are tank manufacturers, for instance, that have some really innovative technology, where they will truck NGV, both compressed and liquid natural gas in. So it's an interesting time. NGVAmerica staff was at a high horsepower summit last week in Jacksonville, where we talked and learned an awful lot about some of these new applications in waterways and marine applications, where they're actually trucking liquefied natural gas from plants that are 10, 30 miles from the ports, bring them to the ports, and then being able to fuel the vessels as they come in for dock in as little as 3 or 4 hours.
Okay.
Really impressive.
That is impressive. So what's the big thing that you think is what's the next big step for natural gas? Is there a shiny new object in the offing, or something big that you think might be able to compel the industry forward?
Well, I think what we're going to see are more and more communities, more and more politicians, more and more elected officials that recognize that there are some serious issues with air and air quality in our most urban areas, and what can we do to invest in improving that situation. And it will likely be around medium and heavy duty. It'll likely be around ports with ships in and out, marine vessels in and out. And how can we transition from traditional dirtier fuels or older vehicles into cleaner vehicles that have less of a negative footprint. We're seeing it around ports. We're seeing it around inland ports like rail yards. And certainly we're seeing it from some of our members who invest in for instance, school buses, trash trucks, where we're seeing vehicles that drive in and out of neighborhoods.
Yeah, and to that point, final mile. Final mile's only going to get more important as we go. So there's probably a big opportunity. You mentioned medium duty. I dare say that's where there could be real opportunity for natural gas trucks, is in that final mile.
Agreed.
Local delivery.
And you mentioned too, sort of partnerships with electric, and so we have members like UPS that have natural gas fleets, but then they're looking at that final mile because there are some cities saying not going to be any trucks available to be able to drive in those cities 20, 30 years from now. So how does a company like UPS get to that final mile? And they're looking at a lot of electrified options, electric bicycles, for lack of a better way to explain it. But I mean, it's interesting. There's a lot to do and a lot to look forward to. And electric is certainly something that's very exciting and interesting for the future. But natural gas is ready right now. It's available, and it should be part of that overall equation when any fleet operator or transit company looks to deliver goods. Natural gas can play a big role.
All right. I will leave it right there. That's a strong point, Dan. Thank you so much. Thanks for being
Joe.
here. Dan
Thanks,
Gage,
Joe.
President of NGVAmerica, with us here on Live One Web.